Gentlemen, welcome to the Be the Man podcast. I'm your host, Greg Denning. I am the creator and coach inside the Be the Man Masterclass and Tribe. And as of the time of this recording, we just did a major upgrade to the Be the Man Masterclass and Tribe, and is now an intensive year-long coaching program going all in. This is part of my life's work and my life's mission. I've known about it for years and really leaning in, just dialing it up, and just did a massive upgrade to it. So if you've ever wanted to be a part of an awesome brotherhood, if you have been wanting to get the results you want in life but struggle getting them consistently, if you want the accountability, if you want the tools and the tactics and the strategies, now is the best time to get in. I'm doing a discounted launch, so you get in a fantastic price for the new upgrade. It's only good for a couple weeks, so take advantage of it. Get in, because then it's going up to the regular price. Significant increase in price. Still absolutely 100% worth it, because we help men get massive transformations. And I've been doing coaching for years now and helping men all over the world get incredible holistic results, whole life results, helping them get the things they want. And now I just need to bring that into the Masterclass Tribe even more so, and just really dial it up, turn it on, make it bigger and better. So if you're ready to invest in yourself and your family and your future, consider joining us, gentlemen. All right, let's dive in. This is why most men fail to consistently get the results they want. It's a simple habit that can produce the greatest outcomes. But first, let me back up and tell a story, which I'm sure you guys can relate to. As I was going through life and rolling along as a young man, before I met Rachel, and then right after, so when I was single and then newly married, I was going through this journey. I wanted to be a better person. And early on, fortunately, I had realized nothing will get better in my life until I get better. And that when I get better, everything else gets better. So it's all hinging, every aspect of my life was hinging on me. That I was the most important factor. And that's good news. It's sobering news, sometimes painful, but it's good news. And so I was desirous to be better. I wanted to be better. I wanted to change. I wanted to make transformations. And I had grown up with a very fixed mindset, a very limited mindset. I had a scarcity mindset. I massively lacked social skills, definitely lacked speaking skills and teaching skills. In fact, I was terrified even to raise my hand in class in high school and share something. And reading out loud? No way, man. I'd rather have some teeth pulled. I just did not want to do that. And so I'd grown up with all these limited skill sets, limited mindsets, limited heart sets. I was just in a small space. Right? I was confined. I was restricted. I was very limited. And I wanted to change those things intensely. So I started reading voraciously, and I started paying attention to everything. And I'd notice people that I admired, man, I want to try that. And I'd make an attempt at it, and it'd be okay, but I would forget. Or I'd say, man, I'd come across something in a great book and think, I want that. And I'd work on it for a few days, but then I'd forget. And so I'd get intense and then it'd go away. And then usually a few days or a few weeks later, I would remember and be like, oh man, I wanted that. I wanted to be that. I wanted to have that. And I remember feeling, my suspicion is you can relate to this. You feel this intense desire, this drive to have something, to be something, to achieve something, and have it consistently and predictably, not just sporadically, not just every once in a while, not like it shows up and you're like, this is fantastic, but then it goes away and you're like, what is going on? Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. In fact, I had a coaching session with a gentleman yesterday, and he was expressing that same thing. Like, sometimes things are good and sometimes they're not, and I don't know what's the difference. What's making the difference? What's happening? And so as I was getting into this, I would come across these great books. And there was a few that really hit me with great power. And so I would read them and then reread them a few months later and then read them and reread them. And I was trying to work on it, but I just couldn't get it to happen. And finally, I just determined, like, you know what? These ones matter. These ideas, the skill sets, mindsets matter so much. I'm just going all in. And one of those books was As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. Somehow I knew, how in the world I ever figured this out? I don't know. But somehow as a young man, actually, one of the reasons why is because one of the very first books somebody gave me when I left home at 16, I don't know how I did it. Actually, I think it might have been my brother. Somebody had read and then given me their copy of The Power of Positive Thinking by Norman Vincent Peale. That's how this idea started. And so I just kind of, from reading that and thinking about it, it's like, yeah, okay, I've got to change my thoughts. If I'm going to change my life, I have to change my thoughts. Then I found James Allen and was like, oh, this guy is the man. I want to think like that. So I read the book, loved it, reread it, loved it, memorized parts of it, loved that. But it still wasn't there. It wasn't consistent. It wasn't solid. I didn't have this rock solid warrior, manly mindset that I wanted. And he's a great thinker and philosopher and poet. So ultimately, I'm like, I want to be the poet, philosopher, warrior, king. I want it all. And I want to think like that. So I thought, you know what? I know how to remember it. Because what I noticed about myself, and I hope you'll notice this too, and you've heard me say this before, input determines output, right? What we put in is what we get out. You guys know that. It makes perfect sense. And I realized that on the days that I read those things, I felt better. I felt more empowered. I felt clearer. I had the mindsets and the heart set that I wanted. In fact, when I read specific books that had skill sets in, I'm like, oh yeah, like I got to do that. And that's the second book that I did this with, was How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, which I desperately needed. I didn't know how to relate to people. I didn't know how to talk to people, especially talk to strangers. I didn't know how to carry on conversations. I hadn't been taught how to do any of that stuff. So there were specific skills and tactics in there, like here's how to carry on a conversation. Here's how to be interested, sincerely interested in others, and how to engage. And so I decided, I'm going to read from those two books every single morning. That way, I start my day getting in the right mindset and reviewing that morning some particular element of social skills, of having influence and of making friends. And I did that every single day for well over 2 years. And it transformed my life. And in a very real way, it can't not. The things we do day in and day out, week in and week out, month in and month out, like become a part of us. And we're doing it all the time right now. It's already happening. But most of us aren't very strategic or deliberate about it. And so eventually, what James Allen taught in his thinking there became my thinking. It just got absorbed into my head. I went through that book, because it's a small book, I went through it so many times. And it just became a part of me. And then I went through those principles of how to win friends and influence people. And it just changed the way I engaged with humanity. And because I had the repetition and the frequency, it just got absorbed, right? And that's the idea, gentlemen. We're absorbing strategically and deliberately the things we want to keep in us, and almost pushing the other things out, right? If your mind is a stage, you fill it, or maybe there's a void or a vacuum, however you want to see it, but you fill it with the things you want, so there's no space left for the things you don't. Another thing I had to do was read books like Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill and The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace Wattles, because I had to overcome my scarcity mindset and my relationship with money. So as I did that, it began to transform everything. So now we're getting into the main thing I want to talk about today, which I wholeheartedly believe, after working with men across 5 continents for over 2 decades, this is why most men fail to consistently get the results they want, is because they are not sharpening the skills, the tools, the mindset, the heart set, and the skill set they need for each role. So your job, brother, and my job, your responsibility and my responsibility for each of your roles is to keep the tools of your trade sharp. That means every single day you and I learn, review, and practice something that helps you do your job well. So let me illustrate, and we'll circle back to that. Let me illustrate. We totally get this, and we understand this principle as it pertains to other important roles, but we rarely do for our own most important roles. So an example is, would you want your surgeon to be years behind on new procedures and best practices because he's been so busy, right? He's like, look, I'm busy, I'm running my practice, I got my family, I got all this stuff going. I just haven't been able to review the procedures for this surgery. I haven't been able to keep up on the new technology and the new equipment and the new things they've discovered about this whole process. So I've just been so busy, but I'll figure this out. Would you want that guy doing your surgery? Right? Or, for example, he doesn't quite remember all the things he's supposed to do because, it's a lot to remember. There's a lot there, and he didn't quite review it. He was quite busy, didn't have time. So he doesn't really remember all the things he's supposed to do once he gets inside of you, but he'll figure it out, right? He's done surgeries before. Like, no way. You would want to have a surgeon that's going to open you up to have the skills of his trade, the tools of his trade, sharp, very, very sharp. Another example is the pilot of your next flight. So you got a flight scheduled and you got a pilot. Would you be comfortable if he was trying to just remember off the top of his head all the things on his pre-flight checklist instead of actually using the checklist? Do you guys know this? That before every single flight, those pilots, and there's 2 of them, and they both have to go through it, they have to go through every single item on the checklist. And they learn that through sad experience, that they've done it so many times. Like, yeah, I'll just check it. They know this stuff backwards and forwards, but it's easy for whatever reason. It's easy to forget. It's easy when, you're distracted or tired or hungry or frustrated or irritated or whatever it is. You just miss one little thing, and sometimes it's critical. And missing that one thing can make all the difference. And so they have to go through a checklist. And I can't remember the total number, maybe 200 or 300 or something. There's a lot. And maybe I'm even off on that, but there's a very specific checklist they have to go through. Or what if this pilot hadn't flown this particular plane before, or he hadn't used the new instruments, right? Most of you would say, no way. There's no way that surgeon's operating on me, and there's no way I'm getting on that plane. And yet that's exactly what many of you are doing. You're behind on some of the strategies and tools and tactics you need as a husband, as a lover, as a father, as a mentor, as a businessman, a leader, an investor. Or you're unaware of tools and tactics, of strategies and systems. I see that so much. Really good men with really great desires, and this was my experience too. I wanted it so desperately. I wanted to have all the great results. I was absolutely clueless that there were strategies and systems that would make it so much easier. And so it was unnecessarily hard for me to figure it out, and sometimes impossible until I got the right tool in place. Again, we get this with so many things. If you're trying to build a house with a hammer and a screwdriver, It would be infuriating knowing that there's all these power tools sitting right there and they're available and you're not using them, or you don't even know they exist. Some of you are just really rusty on the best practices for listening. In fact, I would dare say some of you, like was the case for me, had never been taught how to really listen. I thought I was listening. I thought I was a good listener. But I didn't know until finally we worked through this. And it was challenging. It was very challenging. But Rachel and I we just struggled through it. And she's like, no, when I want you to listen, this is what that looks like. And I was like, wow. Okay, I had no idea. And it's a very specific thing. She and I just did a podcast all about that, how to listen to your wife, which you got to go listen to that. It's fantastic. So you might be rusty. You might be, a little rusty or behind or unaware with specific strategies for guiding your children, teaching them, correcting them, disciplining them, modeling for them, how to use persuasion and influence. The absolute best tool for parenting is persuasion. And yet most men use force or because I said so, because I'm the dad, or they yell, or they use the threat of force, or, I'm bigger than you, or do it or else, like all these consequences. They use the carrot and the stick and all these things that really don't work. And sometimes you get a reaction, but it's not actually working. And if you don't know, or you're behind that, you forget. I know I've forgotten a lot. I would do things and then I'm like, oh man, I forgot that I wanted to be more gentle or more patient or more persuasive. I remember times when they were little, getting after my kids because they were, squabbling over something, fighting over something, or doing, they broke something or spilled something, made a mess. And they went out and just did what kids do, and I'd be like, I'd explode, right? And then afterwards, be like, oh, I felt so bad, and I knew I remembered then, like, no, I wanted to act differently, but I didn't. And so I realized, again, circling back to like sharpening the tools every single day was what eventually kept me from doing the things I didn't want to do, because I was reviewing every day. I was sharpening the saw, so to speak, and staying in my best. And I can't emphasize this enough. It's so simple. It's so elementary. You might be hearing this and think, well, yeah, it does, no brainer. But how many of you actually do it? In my experience, and I get to work with lots and lots of men and meet people all over the world, extremely few men do these things every single day. And that is precisely why they struggle to consistently and predictably get the results they want. So are you rusty or behind or unaware about the best practices for household management, for family lifestyle, for finances, for increasing your finances, for controlling your expenses, for taking care of your investments, right? You have a lot of roles. You have important roles like being a provider and a protector and a teacher and a disciple and a contributor, a servant, right? You've got so many important things to do, and there's a lot going on, and you're experiencing all the things in life, and just like a pilot or just like a surgeon, and I would dare say your roles as a husband and a father ultimately are more important than that. And you might say, well, if a surgeon and a pilot, their lives are on the line. And to that I would say, yes, the lives of your wife and your children are on the line. Not in that they could die in that moment, but you and your engagement and your skill set are determining in a major way how their life will be. That's huge. So that ignorance, meaning we don't know, or the forgetfulness, meaning we knew but we forgot, is making it so much harder than it would be otherwise. So one of the greatest things we can do, gentlemen, every single day, and I know some of you are crazy busy, and sometimes you have to travel for work, or you go on vacation, or you get sick, or whatever. Man, I'd still say, even with all that stuff, you can still be 95, 98% of the time still do it, even when things are crazy. Every single day, to read or listen to something that helps you be a better husband, father, protector, provider, businessman, investor, and man. And you're doing it right now, so kudos to that. And it, in an ideal situation, it might be an hour where you spend a good chunk of time reading and learning or listening. But it doesn't have to take long. I mean, if you did 5 minutes on the worst days, and you can squeeze that in, you can squeeze that in like while you're getting ready. You can easily do it while you're exercising or driving. You can fit this in, but somewhere between 10 to 30 minutes every single day would make a gigantic difference, because the sharpening of your knowledge and skills has a really powerful magnifying effect on your thoughts, actions, and outcomes. That's worth repeating right there. 10 to 30 minutes a day can have a huge effect, because the sharpening of your knowledge and skills has a powerful magnifying effect on your thoughts, actions, and outcomes throughout your day, and then it compounds into the weeks, months, years, and decades. But now you might be sitting there thinking, well, what do I read or listen to? And that, fellas, is exactly what my wife and I have been doing now for almost 2 decades. Literally compiling for you for years. We did it for ourselves, and then we started sharing it. We've been sharing it for a long, long time. But compiling the best stuff. We've averaged a book a week for well over 2 decades. I'm still on that course, right? And going through podcasts and reading journals and reviews and studies, and we are constantly consuming massive amounts of content from some of the best people out there, and filtering through that and saying, well, we know what works and what doesn't. And our advantage is that we get to work with thousands of people from different backgrounds, different religions, different socioeconomic standards, and across the world. Right now I'm over in Turkey. We're all over the place. So I compiled mine into the Be the Man Masterclass and Tribe, right? Obviously that was one of the greatest reasons I compiled that, was to have the tools, the strategies, the techniques, the systems all in one place, and have it for each of those important roles. The whole triple trifecta, right, is the system and strategy in there that has fitness. You guys know this, but it's worth reviewing and hitting again and again and again. Fitness in mind, body, and spirit. Family, which is marriage, parenting, and family legacy. And finances, which is your income, your expenses, and your investments. Right? And if you cover those 9 areas and you're consistent, I'm talking every single day, gentlemen. Just picture this in your head. Just see it clearly with me. If you touch one of those, you learn something, study something, listen, read something, review something. A lot of you already know, but you just review it. You touch on one of those things every day, preferably in the morning. Think about the positive trickle effect and the cascade effect it will have through your whole life. If you review something that makes your knowledge or skills sharper in one of those important roles. Man, this stuff is absolute power, and it has transformed my life and helped Rachel and I have the genuinely phenomenal marriage we have, where we're best friends. We just love spending all of our time together and traveling the world together and raising our kids together. And we work in our businesses together and go on dates all the time and make love all the time. And we have a phenomenal life, and our kids are rock solid. And I'm not boasting here. I'm telling you, this stuff works. And we've been doing it for so many years. It's just been so consistent with it. it's like this magic formula. The kids don't fight with each other. They have a great relationship with each other. They have a great relationship with us. They are learning and studying and pushing their limits and doing hard things and chasing big goals. It's incredible. It's genuinely incredible. It's such a privilege and a blessing. And we get all this, like, it's awesome. And we're living our unique life dream, which includes travel all over the world. And it all comes back to the fact that we realized early on, like, no, we have to do this every day. It has to be done every single day, and we don't miss. And we can tell when we miss. In fact, we'll talk to each other like that. We're like, hey, have you had some input? You got to get some good input. Like, if you're feeling stressed, you're feeling overwhelmed, you're feeling off, like, just pause and get some good input. And we have habits of, we read in the morning. I kind of bookend my days. I read in the morning and I read in the evening. And I listen to podcasts during the day. And I highly recommend to everybody in the Be the Man Masterclass tribe, just log in and go through one piece of the content every day. It's just a reminder. Some of it will be new, things you didn't know before, and some will be a reminder, a review, but you're sharpening the skills. Now, I think this is a good place to share a warning. To not listen to the wrong stuff. And I've spent over $150,000 in courses and classes and masterminds and books and learning. I mean, I've done so much stuff. And I've been in this industry for a long time. And I really started deep diving into personal and professional development at 16. And I've learned to notice who knows what they're talking about and who doesn't. And who has whole life results and who has single skill results. For example, a guy who's giving you his best advice about life but doesn't have children is definitely going to miss some things. Like, so much of what he suggests goes right out the window simply because he lacks personal experience with a wife who is pregnant or breastfeeding or whose body and emotions have gone through the carrying and delivering of a baby. Right? He doesn't realize that all the best laid plans are completely wrecked by little children because they could care less about your agenda and your schedule and all your important meetings. Right? Do you think infants and toddlers think about what you need at that moment? Ha! Right? That's laughable. And so you have to have those experiences, and you have to walk that road and get whole life results. Right? And you also have to worry about the guy who tells you how to build and grow your business, but doesn't simultaneously give you a very honest portrait of his marriage and parenting and family legacy. There's a lot of business advice that harms family. It's everywhere. And we have to watch for it. And so much of the business advice out there, it actually works. It works to grow the business, but they don't talk about the wreckage behind the scenes. How, yeah, it grew the business, but it actually ruined the family or the marriage or the health or the well-being, right? So for me, it's always been absolutely critical. It's family first. I want to be a family man with a business, not a businessman with a family. And any advice you're looking for has to be whole life. It's got to include health and well-being, right? The spiritual, the mental, the emotional, the physical, and definitely including all those relationships and all of it. And what's interesting, if you go into bad advice, if you follow it, you're likely to get what they did. And it's tempting to lie to ourselves sometimes and think that we might be the exception. But that's actually a very foolish mistake, gentlemen. I've done that. Like, I can do this and it'll work out for me. And you go down the road and you're like, duh, I should have known. If I follow that advice, I'm going to get similar results. I can't even tell you how many times I've heard that sad story. And now I get to hear it all the time because of the work I'm in, right? Men come to me, families come to me all the time, and I get to hear that story. How they went down this road, telling themselves they were doing it for their families, for example, but it really was to the detriment of their families. And really good men with really good wives thinking somehow they could follow that destructive formula without the destructive consequences. It just doesn't work. So, circling back, gentlemen, the number one way to consistently and predictably get the results you want is so simple. It's so elementary. And it literally is just to spend time every single day. 10 to 30 minutes is a recommendation. On your worst days, it'll maybe be 5, but don't skip, man. Miss a meal if you have to. Skip something else if you have to. Don't miss out on this. It makes a huge difference. And on your best days, get 60 minutes or 90 minutes in. And if you listen to a book or a podcast or one of the trainings inside the masterclass while you're running or working or driving, you can actually get massive amounts of great input in. If the solution to your problem is readily available and you don't use it, that's on you, brother. That is on you, and there's no excuse. And again, I understand this because I struggled with it before, and I get it. It's easy to forget who you want to be and how you want to live. It's easy to forget all the things you need to know and remember and have that review. I had a coaching session last week where they said that very thing. Is like, hey, look, like I know these things. It's just that I forget to do them. I get going, I get in the groove, I get in the zone, and I'm moving along, and I just forget these other little elements that make such a massive difference. And so a big part of it is just remembering and being accountable. That's why the tracking inside the Be the Man app is so powerful. That's why the accountability with the tribe and the brotherhood is so powerful. That's why, we're checking in and being transparent and sharing what we're working on. This stuff just works. So, as simple as this sounds, it has unbelievable power, compounding and magnifying throughout your whole life. If you did nothing else, this would have that power. Every single day, learn something, read something, listen to something, go through one of the trainings inside the Be the Man Masterclass and Tribe that will help you sharpen your skills, sharpen the tools you use in each role to make sure your knowledge and skills are dialed in so that you can be your best. That is the simplest formula, and yet it is unbelievably transformative and powerful to help you get the results that you want. Do it. Start today. Make it happen. Be the man.